What the heck is going on? I entered the right code. 8893245. Maybe they changed it. Let me give Hans a call. Hey Hans, it's Scott. Yeah. Everything's okay, but the alarm's going off. I went into the vault that holds the Husqvarna cams, and the alarm is going crazy now. What code do you have? Yep. 3245. Yeah, that's what I've got too. Let me try Bill. Maybe he's got a different code. All right. Thanks, Hans. Bye. Hey, Bill. Yeah, I'm glad I got you. Hey, what code do you have for the vault that holds the Husqvarna cams? Yep. 8893245. That's what I've got too. Okay. Let me try calling the security service. Hold on a second. All right, actually, let me let you go. Take care, Bill. Hey, happy birthday, by the way. Hope you had a good birthday. See you later. Yeah, hello? Yeah, this is Scott at the workshop. I've got the alarm going off on the Husqvarna cam vault, and I've entered the code that I've got, 8893245. Herr Obermeister set this up for us, and that's the code that he gave all of us. The code is right except for the last two numbers. So the code should be 8893254 instead of 45. You know what? That makes a lot of sense. In Germany, you switch the last two numbers. Let me try that. Hold on a second. Okay. Oh, wait a second. That's not right. Yep, that did it. Herr Obermeister reversed the last two numbers, so I've got the alarm off. The strobe just stopped, so we should be good now. We should be good. Thanks a lot. I'll pass along the information to everybody so they've got the correct code to deactivate the alarm on the Husqvarna vault that holds all of the cams for the machines. Okay. All right. Thanks a lot. Yep. You have a good day. Bye. Holy mackerel, what a mess that was. Let me get some lights on in the workshop. And hopefully we'll be able to continue. I'm going to turn on a little bit of music just to calm me down. My heart is racing after all of that. The alarm going off and everything. Holy mackerel. For the first time in the history of this channel, I have the privilege of introducing Annette Stover's Swedish Beauty that's going to be heading to Cypress, Texas. And it's sewing on a cam never shown on this channel before. Cam letter D. Ha ha ha! Well, that was quite, wow, I didn't expect all that. Obviously, the cams for these Swedish Beauties are very, very, very valuable. Very valuable. Crazy valuable. And so I was just trying to open up the vault where we keep the cams. And as you heard, the alarm started going off, and Herr Obermeister is the one that set it up for us. He had a buddy, I guess, from Germany that, I didn't get all the details, but he ended up coordinating the setup of this new vault to safeguard our Swedish Beauty cams, and he reversed the last two numbers in the alarm code. So, I'll actually show you. I wrote down exactly what he showed me. Come out on this shot just a little bit. So I wrote down exactly what he gave me. He gave me the 8893245. He said it in German when he gave it to me. He said, das Nummer ist 8893245. So I wrote it down exactly like that, just like you see it there on the paper. But the number should have been, according to the alarm company, the number should have been 8893245. So he switched these last two numbers. Remember I talked about that in the German language? The last two numbers are flipped. And so when he wrote it down for me and I copied it down, he flipped the last two numbers, which resulted in a very, very exciting experience in opening the vault. First time I did it, it's like, whoa, let's not have that happen again. So I hope you heard over that very exciting music. This is the first time in the history of this channel that I'm having the opportunity to use the cam letter D in sewing off, getting ready to send a machine off to a customer. Let me rewind because I'm just really pumped up right now after that alarm going off and everything. Annette Stover again is wonderful lady and a very faithful follower of my work on Facebook, on YouTube, etc. And she approached me back in June, I believe it was, and said she was really, really hankering to get a Swedish Beauty. And I recently had a lot of requests like that. So over the last couple of months, June until now, I've just been getting hammered by requests about Swedish Beauties, which is wonderful. I love it. But at the same time, it makes it real tough on the customer because they're always following up. Let me come on this shot a little bit. They're always following up and basically saying, you know, any word on the Swedish Beauty, and I'll go, well, you know, I've got a bead on one, but I don't have it quite tracked down yet. Well, you may have seen on a recent premiere, I did an unboxing on a Swedish Beauty that came out of Oregon. And that was a machine that I had sourced specifically for Annette. I liked the look of it. I loved the history of it from what the seller told me, Alejandro, if you saw that unboxing. But to my shock, even after my detailed vetting process, when I unboxed the machine, I plugged it in, I fired it up. It initially fired up fine, and then all of a sudden it just went dead. And if you saw on Facebook, right after that unboxing premiere, I dug into the machine surgically and tore that motor down and found that they had used the wrong kind of lubricant on it, and it was amazing that the motor even turned over. So I went through it and basically from one end of the motor to another just totally renewed that motor. And as I showed in the recent premiere with the FOF 332 that's going to be heading out to Pennsylvania, that motor is like, it's got attitude now. It's got major attitude. And I just finished the rest of the finalization on that very same machine, which is this machine right here that I had intended to prepare for Annette down in Texas. So this machine is absolutely fabulous. And when Annette and I were talking back in June, at that time I was really short on cams and I didn't have any letter A cams. And so I said to Annette, I said, you know what? You've been so patient, you've been so kind, you've been so cooperative as we pulled all these pieces together to make this Swedish Beauty a reality for you. Instead of giving you a cam A, which I don't have any of right now, I'm going to give you a cam D, which is like, you can't find them anywhere. Even Hans over in Norway, right next door to Sweden, said, Scott, I've never been able to find a cam D. Well, I have two cam Ds. And one is going to go to Texas to Annette. The other one I'm going to ship to Norway to Hans. My belief is when you give generously like that, it comes back to you at least 2 or 3 fold. So I'm not even the least bit concerned about giving my cam Ds away because I know inevitably I'm going to get more cam Ds that somehow come my way again. So that's what I was doing. I'm going to the vault. I'm pulling out the cams, which we keep locked up. All of a sudden the alarm goes off. So crazy, absolutely crazy. So let me finish the sew-offs on cam D, and I should also mention I'm going to, and these are the other cams, by the way. I'm going to see if I can do the rest of these stitch-offs, but I'm going to be doing them with a needle that I've never used on this channel before. I've never used it. And I learned about it, and it sounded kind of cool, so I ordered some, and they're supposed to, and I've never really thought about the factor of a needle getting hot or heating up as you're sewing and it's going up and down, but it makes sense. I mean, the friction factor of going up and down, it's going very rapidly, and it generates heat, and then it causes the needle to, degrade and break down more quickly. So they've come out with a newfangled creation, and it's called a chrome professional grade needle. Chrome professional grade needle. Let me show them to you. And if any of you have tried these before, because this is my very first time trying them on this premiere today, type in the chat what you think of them. Because I was a little bit skeptical. Yeah, there's friction when the needle goes up and down, but is it really going to be that big of a difference between one Schmetz needle and a chrome Schmetz needle? I don't know. I guess we'll find out in the sew-off today to see how it does. But it says here, use Schmetz universal needles for most wovens, knits, materials such as leather, denim, stretch, or coarse knitwear can be sewn, blah, blah, blah. So this is a universal needle, which I use sometimes on the channel, but specifically it's a chrome needle, and it doesn't go into on the packaging what's the big deal about chrome, but I Googled it, just like you could as well. And that was the thing they talked about, is that because it's chrome plated, it keeps the needle cooler, it lasts longer, it blah, 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 blah. So we'll see if that's true or not during this premiere today. We'll kind of put it to the test. And if you want to buy some chrome needles and then send information to me or Hans or Bill and say, this is what my experience was, I'll post it so we can all get kind of a consensus on what's the deal with these new chrome Schmetz universal needles. Are they real? Are they fake? Are they whatever? We'll find out. So I'm going to zoom back down to the needle. I've already done one stitch, which is stitch number 4 on cam D, and it's really cool. It kind of looks like a little sailboat to me. Let me zoom in on it again. You can kind of look at it as we get ready to do some more stitch offs on cam D. Once the camera decides to focus in. There we go. So yeah, it kind of does look a little bit like a sailboat. Maybe it looks like something totally. I've got to breathe real quick and slow down after that alarm and everything. I'm still like, oh. It kind of does look like a sailboat, but maybe you can type into the chat what it looks like to you. It might look like something totally different. So I'm going to turn the volume way down and get our next song queued up. That first one is called Forget Me Not. And the next one I'll play after we finish Cam D sew-offs, because I want you to listen to this machine run after I finalized it. Again, this is the same machine that I just unboxed very recently that started to run and then it just died. And again, you'll see those pictures on Facebook. As a matter of fact, I may have queued them up yesterday on the computer. Yeah, I did. Excellent. I queued them up on the computer, so I'll show them to you on this premiere right after we get done sewing off Cam D. Okay? And I'll hold off on the music until we get done with Cam D. All right, I'm getting my thoughts together now, slow but sure. So Annette, if you're watching this, I hope that alarm didn't scare you as well. You're a tough Texas lady. It probably didn't faze you in the least. So let's finish off Cam D. And off camera, what I'm going to be doing between each cycle, and I should show this to you as well and show it to Annette also. And I should mention, I'm like all over the place, I know. But I should also mention that this is a CI 21A. CI 21A, 1.5 amp motor. Lot of get up and go, to say the least. So what I recommend doing, there's a little slider right here on the needle position controller, this one right here. This is our needle position controller. It also allows you to change the different modes on the cam between 1 and 5. Again, on position 5, on all the black cams like these, position 5 is always going to be a zigzag, because again, if you didn't see one of my recent premieres that explained it, the zigzag is something that's on each one of these cams because it sets the swing boundaries of the needle. Without a cam being in the machine, the swing boundaries can get out of whack and you can actually strike the throat plate, or you can strike the hook or the bobbin case. So always operate a Swedish Beauty like this with a cam in the back of the machine, whether it's in Annette's case, I'm giving her cams B, C, and D, or whatever. I mean, you just want to have a cam in there because it serves a vital purpose, not just to generate stitch output and decorative stitches, but it also sets those swing boundaries of the needle. So we just did cam stitch number 4 on Cam D. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to zero out the stitch width, take it down to 0, which releases the mechanism so that that slider on this needle position controller moves more easily. You don't have to force it. So I'm moving it from 4 to 3. Just double checking, 4 to 3. And then bring your stitch width back to 4 again. And then the last thing you want to set is your stitch length, which is this control right up here. This control is stitch length. It's also going to be reverse in the middle also. And I didn't mention it, but I've mentioned it many times before. Also on the stitch width controller right here, you also have a little metal tab on top that allows you to stop and start points as you're making buttonholes. And then obviously this is to drop the feed dogs right here on the very bottom. But on the stitch length, when you're doing cam generated stitches, you want to take it down right to about 0.5. You can even go a little bit lower than that, but I wouldn't go much lower because then you're not going to get any material movement. It's gonna kind of congest down at the needle, and you're going to get some potentially some balling of the thread on the bottom, and it's just going to make a little bit of a mess. So I would go not much further than about 0.5, maybe a little bit below. Needle position can be right in the center, and we're good to go to do the next stitch on Cam D right after I change the camera position. Okay, so again, we're going to be doing stitch number 3 on cam D. And I didn't do stitch number 5 just because stitch number 5 is a zigzag, and we're probably going to use it on one of the other sew-offs later anyway. All right, so here we go, stitch number 3 on cam D. Let me just get my take-up arm all the way up. And we've already done one row using this fancy Schmetz chrome professional grade needle. Now we're going to try doing our next stitch and just see how this needle does. All right, here we go. I thought I'd end with the needle up. I got close, but not close enough. Yeah, that's a pretty stitch too. I like that. No wonder people are so, I mean, not only that they're ridiculously rare. I mean, Hans can't even find them over in Norway. The cam D's is what I'm kind of muttering about. But they do have some beautiful stitches on them as well, on this particular cam. And this is the first time that I'm actually using it, by the way. And I'm using it on this this stretchy material so I can really put Annette's machine to the test as far as the feed dog movement, etc. So this stuff, if you're really new to the channel and you haven't seen this before, turn my screen around. This stuff is incredibly stretchy. See that? Whoop! It's so stretchy I lost track of it. So it really is, I mean, it's an optimal test for Annette's Swedish Beauty because it's real slippery, it's real stretchy, and if we can lay down a decent looking decorative stitch with all of that needle swing using material like this, then if Annette uses more of a standard cotton type blend with maybe a stiffener in it or something like that, she's going to get definition on these decorative stitches, whether she uses her cam D, her cam C, or her cam B. She's going to get decorative stitches that are just ridiculously gorgeous. And even these are gorgeous on this type of stretchy, slippery material. So let's go ahead off camera. I'm going to take us down to 0 on stitch width. I'm going to move our slider to position 2 as far as our cam. Yep, position 2, just want to make sure. Take our stitch width back to 4, and we're going to sew off this next stitch, which again is going to be stitch number 2 on cam D. Again, this is the very first time, even if you've been with me from the very beginning on this YouTube channel and you've seen a ton of Swedish Beauties sew off cam generated stitches, these green machines, this is the first time you're seeing these stitches on this channel because it's a cam that I've never been able to present before. But I was very blessed recently to get a couple of these cams, and so I'm having a chance to present it for the first time, which is super duper cool. All right, so our next stitch, stitch number 3, cam D. Here we go. Yes! I stopped in the up position. Hooray! All right. All right, let me give these threads a clip, and we'll keep on marching. I'm planning on showing these all to you once I get done with cam D, and we only have one more stitch to do on cam E because, again, I'm not going to do the zigzag that is in position 5 because we'll be very likely be using that later. And you guys are smart. You've seen a lot of zigzags in your life, but these stitches, we're seeing them all together for the very first time, which is really super. I'm still stoked about it. Super way cool, even after all the fiasco of the alarm and everything going off. But you know what? You got to protect what's valuable. And these cams are like plastic gold or polymer gold. Maybe they're polymer. I think they're polymer. They're a lot more durable than plastic. So let's just say they're polymer gold. Blah. So I'm taking the stitch width down to 0 again. I'm moving us to the very final stitch, which is stitch number 1 on cam D, and we'll see how Annette's CI 21A 1.5 amp motor does with this last decorative sew off on cam D. All right, are you ready? Of course you are. Here we go. I can't believe it, and I stopped in the up position again. It's a miracle. Yeah, that's a cool one too. I like that one a lot, don't you? You kind of can, you see it on the shot right there. That's a fun one. No wonder cam D is so, no wonder people are pursuing cam D so much. These are some awesome stitches. And we'll probably do the other stitches on Annette's cams B and C as well, just so we can see those. We got enough room on this material for sure. So let me give that thread a clip. Yeah, if anyone else finds this kind of material, it is nuts to sew on it. I mean, look at that. It's like bubblegum material almost. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on a little bit more music, and I'm going to open up the back of the machine, and I'll probably put in cam B first. I'll take out cam D and put in cam B, but let me change the shot so you can look at Annette's machine. You can also look at the stitches real quick as well. Again, if you use like a cotton blend or something like that with stiffener, holy mackerel, those things will just pop. Pop, pop, pop. Okay. Let me put on a little bit more music in the background. Beside me, and I'll turn the volume way down, obviously. Okay. So changing out cams, if you haven't done it before, is actually very, very easy. As a matter of fact, I'd come off the tripod and show you, because it's out of view, obviously. If I don't trip over the chair, that is. So you just open this little door right here. And yes, I'm using the Americana quilting thread that I got from Joann Fabrics. So you're going to kind of be looking at this a little bit upside down with me. Notice the first thing, and I've talked about this in other premieres, see how the cam is recessed on the cam stack right now? You do not want to try to remove it when it's like this. You want to slide that slider all the way into position 5. And I may have to reset our, see what I'm talking about? If you don't recalibrate it by taking this down to 0, that'll sometimes stick on you. It releases the mechanism, and then watch, boom, easy. Easy peasy, as they say. So all the way to position 5, and then you can see now, I'm looking upside down, forgive me. So you can see now that our cam is extended all the way out, and this is how you want to remove it. Okay, so there's a little lever on the bottom. I'm going to slide that little lever down. You kind of can see that. Yep. And you just grab the cam and just slide it straight out. Release that gently because it's on a spring. See that? And I'm going to show it on camera because this is exciting for me. Cam D. Never, ever, ever shown on this channel before. Right, Your Majesty? I know you don't like it when I do weird things like this and I'm showing you through the opening of a cam, but it's kind of fun. So I'm going to set this cam D to the side. We're going to put in cam B and we're going to keep on marching forward. And again, this is going to go to Annette. And yes, I'm going to insure it and probably send an armed guard with it as well. And then the other cam D that I have is going to go to my good friend Hans over in Norway, so he has a complete set and doesn't have to search for it anymore. Keeps going over to Sweden and say, give me a cam D, give me a cam D, and they're like, we don't have one, we don't have one. He's like, hey, that's cool. Scott's got my back. Scott's got my back. Okay, so once again, we're going to grab that little lever down. We're going to slide our cam B on. Kind of just turn it until it slides into place like that, and then release your little lever. close your door, check your thread. All right, so I'm going to go back up on the tripod, and we're going to keep marching forward with Cam B. DBC. We could make a little rap song out of that, couldn't we? We're going to go to Cam D, then Cam C. No, sorry. See, I totally messed it up already. Cam D, Cam B, Cam C. All right. Yeah, that last stitch on Cam D is super cool. See that little tail thing that it does? And again, when I hold these up or put them up with painter's tape, whatever, you'll be able to see them more on this stretchy material. But again, if Annette would be willing to do it, and I'm sure she would, she's a very gracious lady, if she can get some cotton blend or something like that, and then put some stiffener or whatever with it, and sew off some more of these with a setup like that, holy mackerel. That'll be rocking cool. That'll be rocking cool. All right, let's move on to Cam B. Cam B, then Cam C. So that again was called Beside Me. And now we're going to do something called cover. Turn the volume way down. Way down. Just softly in the background. All right, here goes Cam B. I got to remember to move my stitch width back. I didn't do that yet. Stitch width, when you recalibrate it so you can move that slider and you take it to 0, just make sure before you execute your next stitch that's cam generated that you move that stitch width back to 4. Otherwise, you're going to get a straight stitch. And I've done that before. All right, so I'm going to move us. Again, I'm not going to do a zigzag right now. I'm going to move us to stitch number 4 on Cam B. Stitch number 4 on Cam B. Here we go. Oh, I was so close to being in the up position. You know what I should get for fun? Hold on a second. All right, I'm going to get my little heat gun. And I'm going to come on this shot just a little bit. So that's our first stitch. Yeah, that's a cool one too. I like that. Come up just a little bit so I can do some temps on this needle. Because I'm a skeptic still, I'll be honest with you. I don't think a needle heats up that much, especially not in the workshop, because it's generally kind of cool down here. So I'm going to get, it's been sitting up there for a little while, I'm going to get a temp of the needle. Make sure I'm hitting it here. Yep, I am. So I'm getting, where is it? 64.5. 64, where it is, 64.5. Is that what it says? Yeah, 64.5. So we're going to do our next sew off, and immediately when we're done sewing, I'll check the temp again, see if it's higher than 64.5. Otherwise, I'm going to be a little bit doubtful. But maybe the assumption is you're going to be like doing some heavy sewing. I mean, just, you know, minutes on, who knows what. But I don't know what the parameters are for determining that there's that significant of a temperature raise that they had to create a chrome professional needle. But hey, you know what? I bought them. So the Schmetz people are smart enough to say, I bet you Scott will buy one, even if it's not true. But maybe it is true. And again, any of the rest of you that want to buy some of these chrome universal needles that Schmetz is offering now can share your experiences with us on Facebook. Yeah, that's a cool stitch. I like that. All right, let's get our next one ready. So off camera, I'm taking our stitch width down to 0, and I'm going to move us from stitch number 4 to stitch number 3, putting our stitch width back to 4. Yeah, our camera's pretty good. And we will do our next stitch, which is stitch number 3 on Cam B. Here we go. up position. I love it when that happens. That is so cool. So that's the one we just did. That's kind of neat too, isn't it? I don't know what you call it, almost kind of a pine cone stitch. Type in the chat if you got a totally different name for that stitch, and I'll show it to you again so you can look at it. But as you know, I usually make up stitch names, and whoever is real passionate about that, kind of like our box closers, I'm sure that really, really irritates them when I come up with fake names about stitches that we use, that we do in this workshop. So, but that's okay. That's okay. They can get upset about it. This is a playroom. We're going to make up our own names, right? So that's the one we just did right here. That's the one I'm calling kind of a pine cone type stitch. You can see other ones we've done already if I kind of move them across. All right, let's get this back underneath the needle and we'll move on to our next stitch on cam B, as in boy. So I'm taking my stitch width down to zero it out, and I'm going to move our slider from 3 to 2, and then our stitch width back to 4. So we're going to buzz down and do this next stitch on Annette's, I just totally blanked, 21A. It's an I-21A technically, I guess. Let me look at the back to make sure I'm not totally befuddled in my mind here. Yeah, it's actually a CI-21A, and I knew that. CI-21A. I got more sleep, but I'm still kind of ramping back up, y'all. So be patient with me. All right, so here's stitch number 2 on Annette Stover's CI-21A. Again, 1.5 amp motor. All right, here we go. Ended in the down position. Okay, that's okay. So that's the one we just did there, kind of the snaky pattern. I'll lift it up so you can see it a little bit better. And again, this material I'm using is not ideal for intricate decorative type sewing like we're doing right now. The needle is supposed to be pretty good for it. I think a lot of the quilters are starting to buy these chrome-plated professional grade needles now for quilting. But the material I'm using, even though the needle is ideal, the material is less than ideal, that's for sure. So this is the last, where am I? This is the last one we just did, the snaky one. You can see there. All the way on your right. I'm looking at the camera, so it's on my left. And then we did all these other ones as well. You kind of see them as I bring them across there. Beautiful stitching, beautiful stitching. So maybe this fancy new chrome needle is making up for my choice of a stretchy, slippery material to really, really put Annette Stover's machine to the test here. So thank goodness now for chrome, I guess, huh? So let's go ahead and take our stitch width down to 0. I'm going to move our stitch selector slider down to 1, which is our final stitch on cam B. Take your stitch width back to 4, and let's try this last stitch on cam B. Yes, in the up position. Hooray! That's a kind of a ticky-tacky stitch, isn't it? That's what I would call it. That's a fun one. I'll show that to you a little bit from a different angle. Kind of like a ticky-tacky stitch. And any of you that grew up in the 70s, 80s, you probably remember the Tic Tacs. I don't know that they make Tic Tacs anymore, do they? Type in the chat if they still make Tic Tacs where you're at. Because I haven't seen Tic Tacs on the shelf for a long time. I just haven't. If they're still making them, I don't know. You saw recently in the news where they finally stopped making Tab tab, which was it was like it was almost like Tang that they took up on the space program things, but tab was supposed to be, I think their whole thing was beautiful something for beautiful people is kind of what they always were talking about. So this is our ticky-tacky stitch. Where is it? There it is. All the way over here where my finger is. That's our ticky-tacky. You see the snaky one we just did. And the pine cone one next to it. And then all the other ones that we've done so far. I don't know about y'all, but I think Annette is going to have a lot of fun with this machine, don't you? I think she's going to have a lot of fun. All right, so that was our final stitch on cam B. Again, we didn't sew stitch number 5 because that's a zigzag. So I'm going to get us set up for the next sew off, which is going to be on cam C. And that will cover the cams that I'm sending with Annette's machine. The only cam she doesn't have is cam A, and before I ship it, if she wants to broker a deal with me to try to get a cam A, I'm really short on cam A's, but she'll use that sweet Texas charm and say, Scott. And I'll say, yes, ma'am. So we'll see. And then she would have a total set minus the E. The E is even, I mean, that's like impossible to find. Hans has one over in Norway, and they're virtually, I mean, it's like finding a needle. It's like finding a tiny little needle in a tiny little haystack. Actually, reverse that. It's like finding a tiny little needle in a huge haystack. I think that's more accurate. Okay, so I'm going to come out on this shot just so you can kind of look at the totality of Annette Stover's incredible Swedish Beauty. And while you're looking at that, I'll put on a little bit more music, and I will switch out, since you already saw me do it once, taking out cam D and putting in cam B. Now I'm going to do it knowing that you're so smart you don't need to see it again. I'm going to take out cam B and put in cam C. All right, so that last one was called Cover, and now I'm going to put on a song called Cold Water, which is something you probably get if you go camping. And I'm not a big camper. If any of you are hardcore campers, type it in the chat and say, Scott, you really should go camping. Because that's going to take a lot of convincing. It is. Tell me if this sounds like cold water. I'm going to crank it up just while we're doing this changeover. It doesn't sound like cold water yet to me, but maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm missing something. All right, let's move on with cam C now. I'll turn this music back down. It's not sounding like cold water. That's the name of the title of this. You know, if they included like a sound effect of a little drip, maybe that would work for me. But yeah, I'm not buying the cold water thing any more than I'm necessarily buying the Schmetz chrome needle thing yet. But you know, maybe when we get done, we'll all be convinced, and we're all going to run out and start buying Schmetz universal chrome needles. We might. You never know. We just might. Okay, so again, we're going to do stitch number... I almost started on stitch 5, and that would have been weird because that would have been the zigzag that I've talked about not doing. Check my camera angle, which is still wide. So again, all I did is put in the new cam. I took this down to 0 so I could move this slider very freely and put the slider all the way on 5 to remove the cam. and then I just moved it one out to position 4 so we can do our first stitch off on this cam. And again, my stitch length is right around a little bit below 0.5. Stitch width is always going to be on 4 generally when you're sewing cam stitches with the Viking green machines. And that's about it. It's actually very, very, very simple once you get into the rhythm of things. All right, let's zoom over here now. Okay, cam C, stitch number 4 on cam C. Here we go. Yes, up position. Oh, and it's our Christmas tree. It's our Christmas tree stitch pattern. See that? You can barely see it. I'll trim off the threads, and then you can. I'll show it to you like I did the other ones. So this is the Christmas tree pattern that we just did. I stopped and there's only part of a Christmas tree. Someone cut the Christmas tree down. Yeah, that's a cool pattern. I like that too, along with our ticky-tacky one right next to it. These are some of the other ones that we just did. Alright, so let's do, we just did the Christmas tree one. Let's go ahead and move on to our next stitch pattern on cam C. Yeah, I'm going to have more than enough material. More than enough material. Okay, so that again was stitch 4. We're going to take our stitch width down to 0. We'll move our slider to position 3, take our stitch width back to 4. We don't touch our stitch length at all unless we say, it could use more definition, and then we could take it down just a little bit below 0.5, a little bit further. But I think we're doing pretty well with these, especially considering we're using this stretchy, slippery material, and we're still getting some really good looking stitches on it. So Annette Stover's machine is doing a fabulous job. And this is the same machine again that I just recently unboxed that literally died on the workbench. And then we did all the, I did all the tear down of the motor. And we'll look at those pictures in just a little bit. We'll finish these stitches on cam C, and then we'll pop over to Facebook real quick. All right, so here we go. Stitch number 3, cam C. Oh, so close. So close. So I don't know what we would call this one. This is almost kind of like a shell type pattern. This next one is kind of a shell pattern. Again, from having done decorative sew-offs on this material before with almost a identical type green machine, but using a non-chrome needle, also by Schmetz, but using a non-chrome needle. I'm not seeing, at least for these sew-offs, I'm not seeing a huge difference as far as how the machine is presenting. And you know what, I totally I totally brain farted on you guys. I apologize. We'll do this stitch line. We'll stop at the end whether the needle is up or down, and I'll take another temperature check on it. I was going to do that before, and I just got distracted. So, all right, so let's do this. Let's go on to stitch number 2. I'll take my stitch width down to 0, move our slider to position 2, stitch width back to 4, and I'm going to get ready with that heat gun. I'll get ready with that heat gun. And we'll check the temperature of the needle. Here, we'll do another check on the needle right now since I totally messed that up and I forgot. So let's see. I just want to make sure I'm hitting the needle near the end. So the temperature I'm getting right near the end of the needle is right around 66 degrees. Right around 66. So even if we assume that, you know, that there is some heat up factor, our original temp we got was 64.5. So I mean, it's so minimal. It's like a degree and it's like basically a degree difference. Just gonna see if it's changed a lot as it's sitting there. Yeah, it's still at 66. So 66 versus 64.5, you're looking at 1.5 degrees difference with all the sewing we've done on this needle so far. We'll do another sew off and see if it goes up above 66. I'm just going to write down 66 real quick on my little pad. So we started 64.5. We're at 66 with the last temp check. We'll do stitch number 2 now, and we'll see how the needle temperature is. Because again, that's their whole sales point with these chrome professional grade needles, is they don't heat up as much and they last longer as a result. So we'll see. All right, do I have everything set as I continue to go in 4 or 5 different directions here? All right, here we go. Down position. This is one of my favorite stitches. I really like this. I don't know what you'd call it. I'll probably make up my own name, as usual. But I really like this pattern. See that in the shot? Where is it? There it is. This is the one we just did right there. It's almost like it looks like a hill. You know, if you kind of imagine it turning so that that's facing in a downward position. It almost kind of looks like a series of hills as you're looking across like a range or something like that. But you may be seeing something totally different. If you are, type it in the chat what that stitch looks like to you, and I'll show it to you again once I get my thread positioned here and get these other thread tails cut off. So this is the one we just did. Where is it? Yeah, that's it. This is the one we just did right over here. You can see right where my finger's pointing, or where my thumb is, I should say. And then we'll kind of move across. You can look at all the stitches we've done so far between cams D, B, and now we're sewing with C. Oh, geez. My mind is just everywhere. Let's do a real quick check. Okay, well, maybe I'm buying it more now. I don't know. 64.7. 64.7 is our current temperature on the very end of the needle, just below the eye of the needle. 64.7. That's what I said, right? Yeah, right around 64.7. So, wait a second. That actually went down. 64.7. We were at 66. And now I'm getting 64. Yeah, I don't know if it's... We started at 64, 64.5. We went to 66. And then our last temperature right now, and granted, I waited a little bit as I was showing you the stitches, which maybe I'll do this last stitch and I won't wait. But we came in right around 64.7. So how much does a needle really heat up? I think that's the thing. That's the thing we have to ask. And obviously, you're dealing with different ambient room temperatures as well. So I don't know. Maybe it's just clever marketing on the part of Schmetz in realizing there's a huge market with quilters, obviously. And if they can sell the quilters on the idea that this chrome needle is going to do better for them over the long haul, especially if they're doing a lot of quilting, freehand embroidery type work, and maybe they're running that needle harder, quite a bit harder than we are. Maybe there is more of a heat up factor, but I'm just not seeing it yet. All right, so I'm going to zero out my stitch width. We're going to go to our final stitch on cam C, which is stitch number 1. And we'll see how Annette's CI21A, got it right that time, CI21A, we'll see how our machine does with this last sew off on the cams. And then we'll look at all these cams together, all the cam stitch output. Okay, and I'll try to remember as soon as I get done stitching, I'll check the needle temperature right away and just see if we get anything super dramatic. All right, so here we go. Final stitch off on cam C. We've already done cams D, cam B. So now here goes our final stitch, stitch number 1 on cam C. All right, here we go. All right, needle is down. Bring it back up because the end is probably going to be the hottest. Just checking my alignment with the needle. .6. 65.6. And I did that right away. I actually remember that time. So here's what we got for the, again, we tested, we just got done testing these chrome, where is it? We just got done testing these Chrome Professional needles by Schmetz. And also, I talked about how unideal the material is that I'm using because it's stretchy and because it's kind of rubbery for decorative needle swing. It just isn't ideal. You want a much more rigid type material when you're doing sewing like this. And a lot of people will use stiffeners as well to define those decorative stitches better. But we're using this Chrome Professional needle, which is supposed to stay cooler, it's supposed to last longer, etc., blah, 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 blah. The last temp we just got with that final stitch on cam C, stitch number 1, is 65, where is it? 65.6. So again, we started, let me come out of this shot a little bit. We started with a temperature of 64.5 at the needle, then we went to 66, then we went down to 64.7, and now we just went back up from 64.7 to 65.6. So, I don't know. Maybe we can sew in a circle, do one of my crazy little concentric circle things, and see if we can heat that needle up more, but the room temperature is probably in the 60s as well, so we're not getting anything super dramatic. Nothing dramatic like when we've done heat tests before on foot controllers, like on Bobby's foot controller, and all of a sudden it started spiking up way in heat and it was dramatic. This is not dramatic. We've got the highest range we were able to hit is 66 degrees. The lowest we got is 64.5. So that's not dramatic. And maybe some would argue, well, you're not sewing enough. You're not working that needle hard enough. Well, okay, we'll see if we can do that during the course of this premiere. I'll see what I can get where we can work the needle harder and see if we get anything super dramatic. Super dramatic. Yeah, I like this stitch too. This is a cool stitch. Almost kind of like a sideways building block. I'll zoom in on it a little bit more so we can look at these. And universals, the reason that Schmetz came up with the name universal, maybe they weren't the first to come up with it, maybe they weren't the pioneers of the universal needle, although knowing Schmetz they probably were. But the reason they call it a universal needle, which is what these are, they're just chrome plated, is because universal needles are a needle that you can use on a wide field of different materials. A huge field of materials. And I won't be able to use Maddie's sew-off holder for this either, because this stuff is so flimsy, and I'm going to cut the end off just because we don't need that extra material, and I'll use it for some other sew-off. Trim this part on the top off as well so that we can be all professional, since we're using professional needles, right? We're using chrome professional, what is it called? Chrome professional grade needles. I almost feel like I should have dressed up for this premiere when we're sewing at that kind of level. So let me do this. I'm going to grab a little bit of my painter's tape, and we will put this up on the front of Annette's machine and see what we think of these decorative stitches that we just generated through cams D, B, and lastly cam C. We'll see what we think of these. We'll put it right there, just below the Husqvarna branding mark. All right, let's take a look at these. We'll look at the top stitch first, and then we'll look at the lock stitch second. And again, we sewed all of these with the Schmetz Universal Chrome Plated Professional Grade Needle. Where did we start? Did we start on this end? No, that's the last one we just did. So we started on this end with the sailboat thingy. And I'll do 2 rows at a time, if that's okay. So these are the first 2 stitches that we did on cam D. And again, because this is a rubbery material, the definition isn't quite as dramatic. Matter of fact, let me shoot this straight on. Why don't we do that? Hang on a second. Let me shoot it straight on. We're in a little bit of an angle and we're not seeing the stitches with the clarity that I'd like for you to be able to see them, since we're kind of judging this Schmetz needle right now a little bit. You know what I mean? Straight on, we're going to get a lot clearer picture of how this needle did with this very tricky material. Yeah, this is, oh my gosh, this is hugely better. So these are the first 2 stitches that we did right there. The sailboat one, and then whatever you'd call that one to the right. And I think all in all, the Schmetz chrome-plated needle did a real good job with these 2. Again, these were on cam D. And then these other 2 right here that we're going to next were also on cam D. I'll try to come in just a little bit more. Or I could just show all 4 at the same time. That would probably make more sense, wouldn't it? So all 4 of these stitches you're looking at right now were done on cam D. And I think the machine obviously did a fabulous job. After I spent all that time renewing that motor and every other part of the machine as well. But I think the needle did a fairly good job too. So I'll acknowledge the needle real quick. Chrome professional grade universal needles. Thank you. Thank you. All right, let's look at our next 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll kind of zoom in on those a little bit. Kind of cut off the other ones. So these are our next 4, I believe. Yep, our next 4. And this is off of cam B, done with the same needle. Trying to go as slow as I can and not wobble the camera too much. The one on the far right on cam B I think is really cool, don't you? I mean, they're all cool. They're all cool, but that one on the far right that we're looking at right now is, I think that's kind of a neat one. All right, and last but certainly not least, now we're going to look at cam C. And the totality of this field of decorative stitches. Again, on the far left, the first 4 are off of cam D. The next 4 are off of cam B. And last but not least, on the far right, the last 4 rows on the far right are off of cam C. So I would say these are a definite pass. And I'm going to real quick see if I can, I'll go ahead and flip this around so we can look at the lock stitch as well. Let me set the camera down real quick. All right, we'll stick those back up. All right, it's twisting a little bit to the side, so I'm going to have to kind of come from an angle a little bit. So now on the far right, we're looking at these first 4 rows of stitches are cam D, then cam B, then cam C. So I'll just kind of come like over here. We'll look at these. Again, these are the lock stitches. Which I think they're spot on. And I would say it's more of a product of how well Annette Stover's CI21A is running now, more so than the needle. Because I've used this material before with a standard universal Schmetz needle, not a chrome plated one, and I got very similar results. Very similar results. All right, so we'll move to the next 4. And again, when you're looking through a little screen, it's tougher than you think, y'all. It is. Just going to double check my counting here. Yeah, I think I got it. So these are our next 4 that we had done on cam B. And again, this is our lock stitch. A lock stitch is always going to be more difficult to generate quality on because as that needle is pulling that thread back up, it's fighting gravity, it's fighting the layering of the material and everything else. And here we've got 2 layers of a real rubbery, slippery material. I basically call it the bubblegum material. And even on this lock stitch, Annette's CI21A did just a fabulous, drop-dead, gorgeous job. We'll move over to our final 4, which was on cam C. And here again, I think, you know, the machine did an excellent job of laying down these last 4 stitches that we did on cam C. Again, I would describe them as similar to what I've done on green machines before with the same, with a similar Schmetz needle, I should say, a Schmetz universal needle, not a chrome-plated one, but on a similar machine. So again, left to right, we're looking at cam C, cam B, and then on the far right, we're looking at cam D. And again, this is the lock stitch. And I think you would agree that that's a definite pass. I think Annette's machine did a fabulous job laying these stitches down. So I'm just going to peel that painter's tape off. I might need it again, you never know. There we go. And I will throw this to the back as a definite pass. Again, cams, well, as we're looking at it right now, on the far right, cam D, in the middle, cam B, on the far left, cam C. And I really like that cam C stitch, the last one. That's kind of a fun one. All right, let me throw that to the back by the Rolls Royce. And I will put the camera back up on the tripod. But first, I'm going to show you a real neat note that Annette sent me. I think it's the coolest little note. And when she and I were corresponding about this, and then she sent her payment in, etc., Most folks will just drop their payment into the envelope. They might write a quick little note, hey, thanks, whatever. But look at the thoughtfulness of this. I love elephants. I think they're one of the coolest, most gentle animals, even though sometimes they're portrayed very differently. And it's an ornamental type note. It's just gorgeous. Looks like Jim Thompson is probably the one that drew this or painted it or whatever. But it's just absolutely gorgeous. And then a thoughtful little note on the inside from Annette to me. I'm thrilled to begin this journey with you. Thank you for helping me. Warm regards, Annette from Texas. Talk about a gracious customer. She is entrusting me in, number one, sourcing a machine for her unseen. Number two, trusting that I'm going to painstakingly prepare that machine and get it running at the top of its game for her. And she's paying me a fair price to do all of that work. And yet she's thanking me for helping her. I just think that is a rare, genuine article type person right there. And maybe it's her Texas upbringing. I don't know what you would attribute it to. Mom and dad raised her the right way, but I don't see this very often. You know, I get this from some other customers as well. Juliet, my good friend also from Texas, and a few select others have taken, you know, the effort to do something like this. Boy, that sure makes you feel good. That sure makes you feel good. And it makes you want to work even harder for that customer. Others are not quite as gracious, but I also appreciate them as well. So, all right. Anything else we wanted to... Maybe we can sew in a circle real quick and do a temperature test. What do you think? Let's go ahead and flip ourselves back to a regular straight stitch. And I'll leave this wide shot right now so you can admire. And if you're at home, hopefully you have a drool cup because you need one. I mean, I had other options for Annette, but I saw this machine and she had just been such a sweetheart. I said, this is the machine for Annette. Because not only is it a great sewer after I get done with it, but it's also just, well, you can see. All right, so let me take our stitch width down to 0. I'm going to slide our slider, even though I don't have to. I'll slide it all the way down to 5, just in case we decide we want to do a zigzag. I'm going to take our stitch length all the way back up to 4. And our stitch width is already down on 0. Did that already. Needle position, good to go. All right, so we're all set to do a straight stitch. And I'm probably going to do it on this weird, this is almost kind of a leathery vinyl type material. And I don't have my camera right, so I can't see if you're seeing that. My screen is the wrong way. Oh yeah, you can see that easily. It's almost like the kind of leather you would expect to see like on an older office chair. If you look at the other side, you can kind of see the grain of it. It's a real flat grain, which is good because I'm hoping we'll be able to see the lock stitch more clearly. So I'm going to put that underneath the presser foot. I haven't done this in a while, and I'll be honest with you, I do it for myself because it's just kind of fun. But I'll start on near the outside, and I'll just kind of go around and around and around and around and around until I run out of room or until I run off the material. The latter is more likely to happen. You already know that I don't stay on course all the time. And you know what? Why don't I use Annette's slow gear to do this? So on the right side of the machine, I'm going to pull out her slow gear. So we're taking that motor from full power down to 1/5. And that'll give me more of a fighting chance on trying to stay on course. And I'm not going to come all the way in. I'm going to kind of give us a little bit wider shot here as I try to go on course. And you've heard her machine run a lot already. It's running just silky smooth, gorgeous, drop dead. Are you kidding me? So I'm going to put on a little bit of music in the background to inspire me to sew by. What can I pick out? And I'm trying to think of how long I want to have this. I want a shorter song. How about Once Was? Let me see what this sounds like. Oh yeah, I like that. I like that. That one's cool too. All right, let's put on Once Was. And I'm just going to keep on sewing till I run out of space, which depending on my aptitude today, might not be terribly long. So, all right, so again, Once Was, as we execute a straight stitch on this leathery, cover the old chair type material. and we'll see how Annette's machine does with this task. All right, here we go. Oh yeah, I'm getting into this. Wait a second. I gotta. I'm coming out. Right to there. Why? All right, CI 21A. Let's do your magic. Here we go. I'm all the way down on the foot control. Now I am. Let me make this turn and then we're going to switch back to full speed. All right, I'll zoom in so you can watch closer. Hold on. Yeah, baby. All right, let's take that slow gear away. Away, slow gear, away. Full power, please. All right, let's do a temp real quick on that needle. Where am I? There it is. Folks, I'm only getting, and I'll show you, I'm only getting 64 degrees after doing all that sewing around in a circle thing. Granted, we were sewing part of that at slow gear, but still only 64 degrees. So does a needle really heat up that much? Maybe if you use like a woolen materials or something like that, where there's going to be more friction generated. But we're sewing kind of a leather grade material right now, which is probably going to result in similar friction generation as that needle is going through the material. And I'm just not seeing it. I mean, the temperature staying at 64 degrees, that's even cooler than where we started. I'm going to write down one more number here. We just got 64 degrees. So again, our testing of this chrome needle by Schmetz, one of my beloved companies. I love Schmetz to death. You all know that. But we started with a 64.5. We hit our highest temperature of 66. We then went down to 64.7, then we went to 65.6, and now we just did all of that sewing in a circle on this leather type material you would use to cover a chair with. And we hit 64 degrees shortly after getting done sewing. So does a needle really heat up enough that you need a chrome needle? I don't know. You be the judge. Type it in the chat. Type what you think. Or if you don't think I'm giving it a fair try, maybe I'll use the needle again in the future, and we'll see if we get a dramatic difference with a test that you would recommend. But again, we sewed. I mean, you can look at it right here. That's a leather grain. It's a real flat leather grain, but it's a leather grain nonetheless. And we sewed all of that, and our temperature actually went down a little bit. So I don't know. So let's look at the top stitch first on Annette's machine, and then we'll look at the lock stitch after that. This is wider, so I'm having a little bit of a difficulty getting it within that space. All right, let's come off the tripod, and we'll take a look at this as well. I'm trying to decide how I want to do this so I can, because from here I'm seeing the definition, but I'm trying to get it so you can see it too with the right angle. Maybe from this angle will be a little bit clearer. There we go. That's better. That's better. I'm still not quite at the right angle, but we'll kind of go around it and trying to get the right angle because I can see it as clear as day in the shot. Maybe right there. I'm going to make you all dizzy here. All right, let me come out on this shot because I don't think I'm getting the right angle to show this to you. Unfortunately, let me pull that out a little bit. See how angle makes a difference? It's just weird, isn't it? We couldn't really see the definition on those stitches on the bottom, and now they're popping a little bit more. You can see it. Well, you could see it. Well, from my seat, and these stitch offs obviously are going to go with the machine when I send this to Annette. Look at that. Now you can all of a sudden see it. See that? I'm just going to lift it up a little bit like this. Oh, hang on. Hang on. Air compressor. Again, it's always at the least opportune time. You're trying to hold something real delicate and not move it or wiggle it or anything like that, and all of a sudden you end up getting the air compressor going off. And again, I'm looking through a tiny little screen, so that's why sometimes on your big screen, after this is rendered and published, and you guys can see it with the clarity of high definition, you may sometimes say, gosh, I saw it the first time. I don't know why he's going by it again. It's because I'm seeing it differently on this little screen than you are. And it doesn't have quite the clarity that I'm looking for. Kind of look across now. Those are some real good stitches. They really are, folks. They really are some gorgeous stitches. All right, let's flip this around. Let's flip this around. Let me set the camera down just briefly. I'll turn that tape to the other side. And we'll turn this around and look at the nap side of this, which again, we're very fortunate to have a real flat nap on this. Oops. A real flat nap on it, so it allows us to see that stitch quality much easier than if we had a nap that was real dense. I'm almost inclined to say let's look at it like this. I got the tape on there, but let's try this first and see if that's going to work better. It just might work better. And it probably is going to work better. Also, the color of this material in relation to the real light thread also helps us a little bit, doesn't it? Well, I don't know about you folks, but that is some gorgeous stitching. When you're going around a circle like this, staring through this little screen, I'm probably hitting the same row more than once, aren't I? Let me pause right there for a second so I don't make us all sick. You're going to have to start popping ginger tablets so you don't get seasick. So looking at the totality of it, and I can also just lift it up real quick and see if it is better somehow. Hold on a second. Looking at the totality of the stitching, that is a gorgeous lock stitch. Again, going through a leather grade material like this, you imagine that being on a product. That would definitely be, okay, I'll buy it. That's super cool. Using this to create some sort of an applique with stitch quality like that for a lock stitch. And a lot of folks are more preoccupied about the top stitch. But when you have a lock stitch like this that looks as good as this, actually we'll lay it back down because that's clearer on this darker type leather. When you have a lock stitch that looks as good as that, and then you've got a top stitch that's equally gorgeous on this kind of shiny, leathery type material. I'm just going to zoom in on this right here. Trying desperately to get the right angle on this. There we go. I won't take you in circles anymore. You can just look at it from this angle. That seems to be working pretty well. Look at these. And I would argue that that's more of a product of the machine doing the beauty of the work than the needle. Others might look at the stitch and go, that's a product of the needle. But again, I've generated, look at those stitches. Oh my gosh. I've generated stitches of this quality with a standard Schmetz universal needle, and certainly even with Singer needles, although I don't use Singer needles on Husqvarnas very often. Look at that. That's a definite pass. I know I spent a lot of time on that, but from, again, looking through my little screen, it's hard. I want you to see what I'm seeing, and it's harder to see with material like this. Not so much on this side, but on this shiny side, it makes it a little bit more difficult for me to see through this small little screen. Are you seeing the stitches with clarity? Because I want you to. I want you to see the stitches with the clarity that I'm seeing right here from the workbench. And there I've got a pretty good angle right there to highlight them. So this is a definite pass. I'm going to throw it to the back by our decorative sew-off, which in my opinion was an absolute slam dunk. And I'm going to go ahead and put us back up on the tripod, and we'll do some more sew-offs. We've shown the decorative side of this CI21A. Now I'm going to do a couple materials that are going to highlight the strength of this machine again. Again, this machine comes with an original Swedish 1.5 amp motor. And a 1.5 amp motor made by the Swedish, and in fairness as well to to Sunny. We just got done premiering her FOF 332, and that has a 1.1 amp motor. When you're dealing with Swedish and German motors that have been optimized by me, they're going to go side by side, and it's going to be hard to tell the difference if you're putting them through some heavy duty type sew-offs because they've been optimized. But when you compare a Swedish vintage motor that's been optimized or a FOF motor that's been optimized to the newer motors, even some of the ones that might be rated higher, although it's pretty hard in some of the contemporary machines to find a motor that's above an amp. It's pretty rare. It really is. So, I mean, when you even look at some of the real large quilting machines that I've had in this workshop from some of my quilting group friends that are local, You know, we're talking $12,000 to $14,000 quilting machines. A lot of those quilting machines, the long arm ones, are only going to have about a 0.8 amp motor, maybe a 1 amp motor. That's it. No higher than that. I haven't seen any higher than that. If you all know of any that are higher than that, then let me know. But the ones that I've had in the workshop, the brand new long arm quilters, some of them being made by Elna, some of them by Husqvarna, some of them being made by FOF, we're looking at about a 0.8 or a 1 amp motor. So even smaller than a vintage FOF motor, or smaller than this Husqvarna 1.5 amp motor. My point is, even if you got a more contemporary motor that was larger by rating than a vintage machine, I would bet on that vintage machine every single time. Not only because of the size of the motor, but also just because of the engineering of the machine. Especially if it's been on my workbench and has been optimized, I would put a machine like this that you're looking at on the screen right now, Annette Stover's CI21A 1.5 amp motor. I would put this against a number of light industrial, even some smaller commercial machines. And I would be willing to sit down side by side with those other machine owners that have those light industrial, light commercial machines. I'm not talking about super huge commercial machines that are powered by like a 12 amp servo motor. I'm talking about light industrial and smaller commercial grade type machines, almost like the Jukies that they use for making that My Pillow thing. I had some contact with the owner about a year ago, and they told me what kind of machines they're using. I said I would put my Husqvarnas against your I would put my Husqvarnas against your Juki light industrial machines, and I bet you I'd be able to go head to head for quite a distance. And he kind of chuckled. He goes, "You probably could. I've watched some of your videos." You know who I'm talking about, the My Pillow guy. And he's just out of Minnesota. Some of y'all know that. But that's the level of confidence that I have, regardless of whether I'm using a chrome needle like we're doing today, or I'm using a standard Schmetz universal needle, or any other needle for that matter. You know, as long as it's a fresh needle. I've got enough confidence in the work that I do in these Swedish Beauties. 126 steps if you're new to this channel. If I get a machine in to be serviced, if I prepare a machine like this for Annette and source it from a trusted trader and a collector like myself, I'm going to take it through the same process. 126 steps from bobbin to balance wheel. So that's, when you take a machine through a process like that, if you're not confident in that machine, then you better hang up your shingle and call it a day. Go fishing. But I've got a lot of confidence in my machines. Y'all know that already. I'm preaching to the choir. All right. What are we going to sew next? Why don't we do some genuine elk hide? Let's do some genuine elk hide now. And again, I've done a lot of sewing already on this chrome universal. It's kind of an unknown commodity to me, even though Schmetz is touting it as this newfangled universal needle that can sew leather and a variety of other materials. I don't have any track record with this needle, so I'm almost a little bit nervous about doing elk hide with it. But I'm going to give it a try, and we'll see how it does. If it struggles, then I'm going to, right during this premiere, I'm going to swap out this chrome needle and put in one of my standard Schmetz universal needles. I'm just going to do it right on the premiere, because I am not going to display and feature and premiere Annette's machine and not give it every opportunity to shine and to strut its Swedish strut, which I'm telling you one thing, if you've never seen a Swedish strut, it's something to behold. It's something to behold. And I'll see if I can get a little bit more strutting music on for this Swedish Beauty to do some genuine elk hide. Let's see what we got here. This is called Rhythm Organizer Party. Let's see this. Yeah, that sounds like elk sewing material, doesn't it? Yeah, definitely. I can get into this. All right, let's get this done. All right, let's start with a single layer. Again, this needle is kind of an unknown commodity to me. I'm going to sew on the left side, and we're going to add a second layer to it, depending on how this needle does. All right, stitch width at 0. Stitch length at 4. Center needle position. Let's get this done. Here we go. Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad. I'm more of a fan of the standard Schmetz Universal, but okay, all right. We'll leave it in. We'll leave it in for now. Once I put it under 2 layers of alkyd, if it struggles, I'm swapping the needle out. I'm just going to do it. So here's our single layer that we just did. I'm going to show it to you straight away. Single layer of alkyd. Nothing lightweight about this if you're new to the channel. We just sewed a belt. We sewed a belt. And again, alkyd is chemically processed. It's chemically processed, so it's even tougher to get through than most other leathers. It just is. All right, let's add that second layer, see what we get. See what we get, we're not going to throw a fit. So this is what we're going to sew now with this fancy chrome professional grade needle. If I break it, I'm going back to my Schmetz regular universal in a heartbeat. If I don't break it and it lays down a decent stitch, I'll probably give this needle another try in another premiere. All right, are you ready? I know this is crazy. Look at that. This is crazy. But hey, that's what we do in the playroom. You know what I mean? All right, I'm gonna lay it down right next to this. And then obviously on the other side, we're just gonna have 1 stitch row because we've only done 2 layers once. All right, here we go. I'm a little bit nervous, I'm being honest with you. I'm a little bit nervous. All right, take-up arm is at the highest position. I'm taking a deep breath and I'm gonna ring my bell. All right, the music ended perfectly. It's silent, it's quiet. Here we go. Well, the needle didn't break, but I broke the thread. Oh my goodness. All right, let me rethread this real quick. We'll give it one more try, and if it doesn't make it through with this needle, I'm gonna swap this needle out. If we try it one more time and the thread breaks again, I'm going to my standard universal needle. Because I've sewn at this level before using this. And you know what I'm going to do to give this needle every benefit? To give this needle every benefit, I'm going to engage that slow gear, not to give the machine more power, but to allow me to harness that energy a little bit better, so that if this needle is for whatever reason struggling after all the sewing that we've done on it already, I also did some off-camera sewing as well, we're going to give this needle every opportunity to succeed. So I'm going to go to my slow gear, get my take-up arm all the way up, and let's see if this makes any difference. If it doesn't make a difference, this needle, it's out of here. I'm going to go to a different needle that will work better in getting the job done. All right, are you ready? Here we go. Second try. Schmetz Chrome Professional Grade Universal Needle, going through 2 layers of genuine alkyd. If it doesn't do it this time, it's out the door. Here we go. See that? Can you see that in a shot? It broke again. It broke again. The machine, I'm just going to finish going down this row. The machine didn't have any trouble at all going through this. I'm just going to go all the way down. Slow gear. Slow gear off. Bring that needle up. All right. So here's the deal. Here's the deal. The machine succeeded. The machine absolutely succeeded. You just saw it go through this material, no difficulty at all. I'm taking out my chrome, fancy dancy type needle, and I'm going to throw it into the garbage can. Because you know what? This might be fine for quilters. This might be fine for sewing materials that are lighter grade maybe. I don't know. But it's definitely not getting the job done for me in going through these 2 layers of genuine elkite. All right? And the only other thing I contributed to is the thread. But I've had some good success with this, this thread as well. So I'm going to put in my standard Schmetz Universal. And if we have a similar failure here, then I'm going to look at, it's got to be the thread issue. And then I might forgive the chrome-plated professional grade needle. But if we mow through this with my standard Schmetz Universal, I'm probably not going to look back. I'm probably not going to look back. I'm just not. All right, let me lower that down. So regardless of what happens, I'm already happy with Annette's machine because it definitely got the job done, even on the slow gear. And again, the slow gear doesn't give the machine more power, it gives you more control. You actually reduce the punch factor a little bit when you step that motor down from full power to 1/5. So the fact that it mowed through these 2 layers of elkite on a slow gear with that chrome plated professional grade universal needle, and it didn't struggle, it didn't pause, it didn't hiccup. That's an evidence that the machine is ready to get the job done. But it's either the needle or it's the thread. And again, I've used this thread before, so I don't think it's the thread, but it might be. Because just like any product, you can get a spool of thread that doesn't quite get the job done. So I'll leave that question mark open if it struggles breaking the thread on this as well, because I'm just not seeing it. I'm just not seeing it. I've had success with this before. So, all right, let's try it again. Fresh Schmetz Universal Needle versus 2 layers of elkite. Again, I'm using the Americana quilting thread that I've used before. We'll see how the machine does this time. Again, I think I might engage that slow gear. We'll give this machine every opportunity to strut its stuff and not be held back by either a faulty needle or thread that is not working in this application. All right, blah, blah, blah. Here we go. Get my foot all the way on the pedal if I can do that. Whoa! I am having trouble with these shoes today. I just am. I am having trouble with these shoes. I might do that again just because. And I might sew it at regular speed. I've got my slippers on today. I normally wear different shoes and it is not working for me. It's not working. But I'll tell you what is working. The fact that I switched out the needle from that chrome professional grade to my standard Schmetz Universal. That's what is working, in spite of my bad foot gear. So this bottom stitch, let me just make sure, this bottom stitch is the one that we just laid down, if you can see that in the shot. And the spacing, the formation of that stitch is just absolutely spot on. The top row is the first one we did through a single layer. The bottom row is the one that we just did through 2 layers of elkite. Folks, if you look in a textbook under perfect stitch, there it is. If we turn it over, it's hard to see through that nap. As a matter of fact, I'll pull it back for you. That is a perfect lock stitch as well. Look at that. So I'm always a person that says the needle doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The needle doesn't matter. I'm going to start over again. I had it kind of on a weird angle. The needle doesn't matter. Well, in this case, the needle did matter, because that chrome plated universal, even though it's supposed to be able to sew leather, was struggling, and it kept breaking the thread. And it's not because the needle is not able to make a big enough hole to suck that thread back up through. That chrome universal that I'm using right now during this premiere is a size 100, size 16. 100 size is a European measurement. 16 is a standard measurement we use in the US for needle size. So the needle is plenty big. It's able to make a big enough hole to go through this material. It just isn't able to handle this material without snapping the thread. But as soon as we employed my standard universal Schmetz needle, done. Done. An absolute success. And look at again what we just sewed through. That's a victory. That's a victory. And it really isn't. It's a victory for Schmetz as well, because it was just a matter of using a different needle that they offer. Instead of using that chrome, the fancy dancy one, the chrome that is being marketed right now towards quilters, we went back to a basic Schmetz universal needle, and the result was success versus the failure that we were having before. Look at that. That's the lock stitch, people. I'm going to throw that to the back as a definite success of what this machine is capable of doing. We didn't have any doubt in the machine at all, because even once the thread broke, I just said, we're just going to keep on sewing. We're just going to keep on sewing so that everyone knows. And again, this is the same machine that died on the workbench just a couple days ago when I unboxed it and put it to the test. And this is the same machine that, with a slow gear that does not give this machine more power, it gives it more control. It takes that motor down to 1/5 the power. With 1/5 the power, it punched through those 2 layers of alkyd once that thread broke like a hiccup. It just kept mowing. I even stopped in between the sewing. There was no, there was a total loss of any momentum, if momentum is a factor with the slow gear, which it probably isn't. And it still just went through it like a done. Done. So I will sit corrected that needles sometimes do matter in what a machine is capable of doing. And I don't want to be totally unfair to the Schmetz chrome professional people that probably spent a lot of time and thoughtfulness in creating a needle like this, but I'm going to let the quilters continue to use it. And I might use it if I do decorative sew-offs with Husqvarnas in the future, but as soon as I move to leather and some of the heavier grades, this is off the table, and I'm going back to my standard universal. It just is. It's off the table. All right. So let's keep marching forward. And I haven't even demonstrated a zigzag on this machine yet, which we'll do right now. We'll do that right now. I'm just thinking of what else I want to show you. Let's do some denim. Let's do some denim right now. So I'm going to start with 2 layers of denim. I'm going to fold it in half. Actually, I'm going to fold it in the middle to get us up to 4, and then I'm going to fold it one more time to get us up to 6. 6 layers of denim. Okay? That's not an easy task either. But I've got my standard Schmetz Universal in here, so I'm fairly confident we're going to be able to get this done. checking my needle clearance. And I might go down and around on this, our 6 layers of denim, which I don't have lined up extremely well. Let me try that one more time. Okay, 6 layers of denim. We're going to lay down a, what did I say, a zigzag, right? Or let me do a straight stitch around and we'll do a zigzag down the middle. And I'm not going to be checking needle temperature anymore because I don't think that that's a real factor, to be honest with you. So straight stitch down and around, and then we will go to a zigzag down the middle. And I am on regular speed, and that's fine. All right, here we go. Needle down, I'm going to do my turn. And down to the finish. And I'm not going to close the box. Okay? So that's 6 layers of denim that we just buzzed through with Annette's CI 21A. And it wasn't even a challenge. It wasn't even a challenge for this machine. It just got it done so easily. It's just downright ridiculous. And you might even be saying, is that really 6 layers of denim? Well, I'll show you. I'll show you from the side what Annette's machine just mowed through like a hiccup. And I am going to grab one of Maddie's thread holders, which I think in the last premiere she said they're kind of like the Scrabble holders that they use in the games, but I got the impression that they're a little bit different. So I have no idea. I don't play Scrabble, so y'all that play Scrabble, you might be able to say, yeah, it looks like the same, or it looks different, or whatever. So let's look at this stitch. This is our top stitch. Again, through 6 layers of heavy grade denim. And we'll see how that stitch looks. All I'm going to say is wow. I'm just going to say wow. Look at the totality of that stitching. I'll hold the camera real still. Folks, that is a gorgeous stitch. And that again is the top stitch that Annette's machine just laid through those 6 layers of denim. I'm going to bring it down just a little bit. 6 layers of denim, folks. Let me show you from the side what that looks like. There's one side of it right there. Like a Chicago phone book, practically. Just crazy. Absolutely crazy. That's the side of it. Let's look at the lock stitch. I kind of gave you a little peek at it already because I was showing you the thickness of that. But let's set this back up here, and I will show you, after I get that piece of lint off, I'll show you the lock stitch now. Come on, sit straight on that holder there, you silly denim. So again, 6 layers of heavy grade denim. Here's our lock stitch. Look at those stitches. Goodness gravy. Let's look at the totality of that stitching. So again, imagine kind of like our friend Carolyn out in California that I just sent that complimentary FOF to because her other machine, her Singer from the 1970s, was stolen. She talked about renewing or repurposing old jeans. I think she was talking about old denim. Imagine if you had some old denim that you're going to repurpose and you laid down a stitch like this. Again, this is the lock stitch, folks. This is the lock stitch. And most people are always talking about, well, I'm focused on the top stitch because the top stitch is going to present better. You could turn this either way, lock stitch or top stitch, and you're going to have a product that is going to absolutely capture the hearts of folks. It's going to be absolutely drop dead gorgeous. And again, from the side, look at from the side. I've got my screen turned the wrong way as usual. Look at from the side. 6 layers of heavy gray denim and Annette's machine. I can't see in the lighting. Annette's machine just buzzed through this stuff like it was a light cotton. Like a light cotton. So this is a definite pass as well. I'm going to throw that to the back along with the elk hide and the leather stuff that we went around in the circle with and all the decorative sew-offs that we already did. And I'm just debating what I'm going to do next. Maybe I'll do some canvas. Canvas might be our last sew-off. I've got some gunny sack material here as well. And I could always lay down a zigzag on the gunny sack material, but you know what? We got this space right down the middle of this denim. Let's just do it on here. Let's just do it right on here. Put that presser foot down. Take our stitch width. I'll take it to about probably about 2.5 or 3, somewhere in that range. I'm going to take our stitch length down to about 3 from 4. And let's see if we can lay down a zigzag going down the middle of this 6 layers of denim. Check all my other settings. We're good to go. And we will sew this. Let's sew this with our slow gear. We'll make it even more difficult. Because again, we're taking that motor from full power down to 1/5. All right, are you ready? 6 layers of heavy grade denim, laying down a modified zigzag. Here we go. And sometimes when you use that slow gear, before you try to take the balance wheel and you rotate the balance wheel to bring that needle up, because it's in a different gear ratio, it's easier sometimes just to take that slow gear out. In other words, push that bobbin winder assembly back in to take that slow gear out and then rotate the balance wheel. Otherwise, sometimes it will, because it's in a different gear ratio to bring that machine down, it will be, the balance wheel basically feel like it's stuck. So don't be afraid to take that slow gear out first, then rotate your balance wheel to bring that needle up. Okay? Just a free tip there so you're not frustrated. All right, let's take a look at this zigzag that we just laid down through these 6 layers of heavy grade denim. One more thread to clip here. All right, we'll get Maddie's holder back out. I totally lost track. I think, let me see. Yeah, I think that's correct. This should be our top stitch. It doesn't matter. They're going to look almost identical. Probably will look identical. So there's our modified zigzag down through 6 layers of heavy grade denim. Let me zoom in on it for you. That is spectacular. It just is. I'm going to come out and you can look at what I almost made there that looks kind of like it has a purpose. Other than to demonstrate the strength of the machine, the quality of this stitch, and just the versatility of this incredible Swedish Beauty. But there you're looking at a series of straight stitches and the zigzag modified we just laid down. That is exactly what you want to be seeing, folks. Let's turn it over and look at the lock stitch. And like I said, the test of really how well a machine has been prepared is that you can't really tell the difference between that lock stitch and that top stitch. And that certainly appears to be the difference here, is that there's no difference. The difference is there's no difference. Although remember, as you're going from materials to materials, as we've done, once in a while, you might have to look at making subtle adjustments to that tension. And here we start out real strong. I would say that those are absolutely spot on. But as we move into it, whether this was, and again, I don't know from direction whether this was the beginning of the launch or the end of the launch, those lock stitches, as gorgeous as they are, they could be a little bit more poppy if we increase that upper tension just ever so slightly, just to really, really maximize it. Again, the lock stitch for the straight stitch on the bottom is absolutely spot on. But again, as soon as you incorporate needle swing, you might have to do a little tweak on that tension. I'm going to stop talking because I'm jiggling the camera. And you might be looking through the camera right now. I'm going to stop and say, that's a gorgeous zigzag. It is. But I look for making it as perfect as possible. And that would mean just a slight adjustment on that upper tension. Kind of omitted our top stitch there, our top row of stitches, I should say. So there's what we just laid down on these 6 layers of denim. We laid down straight stitches, top and bottom. We laid down a zigzag going down the middle. We just did that. And Annette Stover's machine, her CI 21A, did not miss a beat. Did not miss a beat. There's our totality of stitching. Again, that's our zigzag and our straight stitching as far as the lock stitch side. I better get a drink of water. So let me throw that to the back as well as a pass. And you can again look at the thickness of what we just went through. You can fold it on your own machine and give it a go with 6 layers of heavy grade denim and just see how your machine does with a task like that. And getting through it is not the only thing. It's laying down stitches like these, like you're seeing here and you're seeing here. That's the true measure of how well your machine is running. So I'm going to throw that to the back as a pass as well. I'm going to move this cool sew-off holder to the side. And I'm thinking I'm just going to do one more sew-off. And it's going to be this commercial grade canvas. It's kind of my backup right now to my U.S. Army grade canvas because I'm getting so low on that, getting so doggone low. So let's see here. All right, the next song I'm going to put on is called Swoop 141. Swoop 141. Yeah, this is canvas sewing music if I ever heard it. Oh yeah, this is definitely canvas sewing. You know, for kicks and giggles, we should sew through this canvas, but we should also do it not with just a standard stitch. We should do it with one of the decorative stitches that's on cam C that's still in the machine. What do you think? Should we be that crazy? Why don't we be that crazy? This is crazy style music right here, right? All right, let's engage that decorative stitch again. Hold on a second. All right, so we got cam C in, right? Take it down to 0. Bring us all the way up to stitch 1, back to 4. Got to take our stitch length all the way down to about 0.5. Now, when you're talking about this tight of a needle swing on material like this, we just got a little bit of crazy in us. We just did. And I'm going to do 4 layers of this commercial grade canvas. And I can't see what you're seeing because I do not have the camera locked. Hold on a second. Yeah, you can't see a thing. 4 layers of commercial grade canvas. We're going to do decorative stitching on it. I know, it's insane. That's okay. I love it. All right, let's zoom in on this. This is our last sew off. We'll do cam C again on this just for fun. Here we go. Almost ended up. 4 layers of commercial grade canvas. Wait till you see these stitches. It's ridiculous. Yes, in the up position. Very cool. Very cool. All right, so I started with the cam that we have in right now is cam C. Just double checking that I got it right. Yep, cam C. And we started with stitch number 1 on cam C. We just did stitch number 2 on cam C. And now we're going to do 3 and then 4. Again, we're going through 4 layers of commercial grade canvas. 4 layers of commercial grade canvas. That is just a little bit of crazy. All right, so we're going to take our stitch width down to 0. I'm going to move our slider to the next stitch, which is stitch number 3 on cam C. And let's continue rolling through this. We just have 2 more stitch lines to do, and we are done. All right, here we go. Oh, ended in the down position. All right, and this last stitch row that we do, I'm going to do on the slow gear. This will be our final sew-off confirmation for Annette Stover's CI-21A that's going to be heading down to her in Texas, the great state of Texas. All right, so let's set it up for the final stitch. Let's turn our stitch width down to 0. I'll move our slider, move us back to 4, pull out our slow gear, and let's do this final stitch off with only the silence of the workshop, as you can listen to this incredible Swedish machine that is past my 126 step process to include major motor renewal. Again, if you haven't seen that premiere yet, where I did the unboxing of this machine only days ago, and this machine basically just died on the workbench because someone had used what looked like molasses syrup all over the inside of that motor. I don't know what in heaven's name they were thinking, quite honestly. And again, I bought this by way of a fellow collector friend that knew of this customer selling it. It wasn't the collector that sold it to me. It was the collector that knew this customer had this Swedish Beauty. The customer, I should say the customer of this collector that has bought machines from him before is Alejandro. And he's the one that I bought the machine from by way of hearing about it through this collector friend. Boy, that was hard to explain, wasn't it? Anyway, you got it because you're real smart. So the long and short of it is, as soon as I step outside of my my safety zone of collectors that I've dealt with before that have exactly the same passions that I do, you step a little bit into a danger zone. But again, because Alejandro was recommended by this collector friend, I said, okay, all right, I'll move forward with that. And the machine and the pictures, and even in hearing the machine running through a video clip that Alejandro sent, no warning flags, no red flags, no warning at all. Even when I set it up on the table here after we unboxed it, it fired up initially perfectly, and then all of a sudden, died. And I've already said it, as soon as I looked at those, you know, the inside of that motor, it was like, how did this motor even turn over? How did it even turn over? But listen to it now. Let's do this final sew off. Again, I'm using the slow gear, and we're going to lay down this final stitch, stitch number 4 on cam C, and then we'll pop over to Facebook real quick, and I'll show you some of those pictures I was talking about. And I better real quick refresh that page just so that I know that we're going to actually be able to see those pictures, hopefully. Hold on a second. All right, well, that's reloading. We'll do this final stitch, and then we'll look at these stitches that we just laid down on 4 layers of commercial grade canvas. It is not easy to lay down a decorative stitch on canvas, a single layer of it, 2 layers of it, 3 layers of it is crazy, and we just did it through 4 layers of commercial grade canvas. All right, our final stitch, slow gear, here we go. It's going to take a little while, you know what I mean, because we're on the slow gear. Oh, I was so close to the up position. I was so close. So again, when you get done with that cycle and sewing that line of stitches, before you grab the balance wheel, particularly on these CI 21As, just push that slow gear back in, and then that balance wheel will move very freely. And you just heard it click, which means it returned it back to that normal mode of sewing. So don't try cranking that balance wheel because it might stick on you, and that's just because, again, the gear ratio has been adjusted to employ that slow gear. So let's at last take a look at these stitches. And again, we did these through 4 layers of commercial grade canvas. Yeah, we'll look at them like that. I think that that's going to be fairly easy. And this is our top stitch that we're going to be looking at first. And I think just for sake of time, if that's okay with you, because we're real close right here. I think we're close enough anyway. Just checking to see if I have my camera plugged in so my battery doesn't die. These are the stitches we just did from cam C on these 4 layers of commercial grade canvas. Those are spot on, folks. They just are. I think I actually have that thing up. Do I have that upside down? I don't know. If it's upside down, just turn your head upside down so it looks like it's right side up. Absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot on. Let's look at the lock stitch. First of all, obviously I have to show you the totality of the stitching we just did. Again, through 4 layers of commercial grade canvas. That is not easy, folks. That's not easy. I know a lot of machines that wouldn't do that on a straight stitch, let alone incorporating all of that needle swing through these very intricate decorative stitching that we just did. This very intricate decorative stitching that we just did, if I can speak English maybe. This is our lock stitch now. And you just don't see any difference at all. I mean, look at that. It's absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot on in every respect. And that's exactly what you want to be seeing You should be able to look at the lock stitch as we are right now. And you should be able to turn it around and look at that top stitch. And they're about as virtually identical as they can be. Top stitch might be a little bit more pronounced just because it doesn't have that factor of getting sucked up through that material again. But all in all, they're going to be virtually identical. That again is our top stitch. This again is our lock stitch. And at least through the camera, I'm not seeing anything different. They're identical. They're basically they present exactly the same way. Stitch definition, stitch formation, stitch presentation, stitch, the glory of the stitch, exactly the same. And again, if you look at it from a standpoint of thickness, turn my screen around, which I don't have facing the right way as usual. Look at the thickness of that. That's what we just went through with 4 layers, not just of standard canvas. Canvas is one thing. This is commercial grade canvas. And that's what we generated. That's what we generated. If that doesn't impress you, then you are a tough customer. I'm not speaking of Annette because I know Annette is probably going, oh my gosh, I love it. And she's right, they're gorgeous. But some of you other folks out there might be a little bit more of the tougher crowd to please, and that's fine too. Is he the cutest little guy ever? How did they ever capture that right at that moment where that cow was licking his face? That is the coolest thing ever. All right, let's look at some of these Facebook pictures and then we are done. We are done. Oops, I got a note from somebody. Get rid of that. So the first thing I'm showing you is just an opening shot. This was only probably minutes after finishing that unboxing on this machine. Again, this machine that I had Annette in mind for. Only minutes after that premiere unboxing, I right away jumped into this machine, and then I spent about 6 hours, I would say, on it. And to give you an idea of some of the junk that was in there, let me go down to this little drip pan that's on the bottom of the machine. That's as close as I can get. My zoom isn't going any further. But all of that tarriness, it's actually like a tarriness on the bottom there. I kind of described it as molasses, was all throughout the machine. The machine motor, I should say. It was pretty much localized there. All right, let's go to the next one. That's just a closer shot of it. Same thing. You just can kind of see that tarriness on the little drip pan. There you got a pretty good shot of it. And you can see it actually wasn't just contained in the motor. It was actually oozing out onto the area below the motor. You can see it on the end of the motor there, which is pretty doggone uncommon. It's all the way up by the area where you would go ahead and put your motor brushes in. And it's even on the edge here where it kind of oozed out of the motor as well. So this was a serious attack. I'll just call it an attack on this motor. And it's still, with the Swedish pride that it has, it's still fired up when I unboxed it, which is absolutely amazing. There you can see that junk a little bit closer up. And again, these are only some of the shots capturing what I did to the motor. When you see me going into it, there were a lot of shots I didn't take because I was just into my mode of, I got to save this motor. I got to save this motor. And I got to give it a new life with new strength and new vitality. So just going through the process now, really starting to get into the motor, inspecting how serious this, I'll just call it an attack, how serious this attack was, which was very serious with all the motors that I've broken down. This is probably one of the worst I've seen. But it was a motor that could be brought back to like new, just like when it left the factory. And this shot's a little bit hard to see, but even on the electrical field on the inside, this stuff was caked on as well. Here's some of the most serious part of what I'll call the attack on the motor was. This is one of the copper wells that goes down to the electrical field where the motor brush is setting. And the motor had been struggling so bad. Normally carbon will stay pretty resilient. This carbon had gotten to a point where at the bottom of the well it was fossilized. And near the top it became so brittle it was like powder. You'll see what I mean in the shots. Well, you won't see it yet. Here I took the bobbin winding assembly that has the slow gear on it apart because it's in such close proximity to the motor. The bobbin winding assembly was also just coated in that stuff as well. There you can see, you know, when it's so thick and so severe, when it's all over the bottom of the machine as well, that's all that syrupy, tarry gunk. It was also all over the belts as well. I had to replace both belts on Annette's machine as well. All over the end of the pulley that comes off of the motor and goes to the bobbin winding assembly. There I pulled the motor out and I'm starting to try to basically clean up all of this syrupy stuff and also dig into the motor as well to get it all out of the motor. Again, you can't leave anything behind because eventually it's going to migrate into that motor. The motor acts like a vacuum cleaner. Look at that stuff. And that is what was inside of the motor as well. I mean, it looks almost like sewage, doesn't it? Here I've got basically a baking tin underneath it to catch the special solvent that I'm using to basically give a bath to this motor and flush all this stuff out of the motor as the first step before I break the motor down so that I can be working with a surface that is at least manageable. And all the junk that came out of there was just mind-blowing. And like I said, in these wells, the carbon usually has a pretty resilient nature about it. Because the motor was struggling so badly, it was fossilized. This is some of the chunks that I'm pulling out of there that, again, it was just amazing that the motor even turned over. Here's some of that carbon dust where at the top of the chamber, as that electricity was trying to pass through this carbon, it basically just vaporized it and created a powder residue. You can see that if I zoom in on it. It created a powder residue that was all over inside. You can see my finger there as well. It was all over the inside of that motor. And it's not supposed to be there. Now that again is a critical, there's two wells on a motor like this where the motor brushes are going to be making contact with that electrical field. When you look at that, aren't you also amazed that this motor could even turn over? That's supposed to be solid. Again, carbon is supposed to be very resilient as far as electricity flowing through it. And also the viscosity of that inner part of the electrical field turning very rapidly as the motor is engaged. And this stuff just vaporized. The motor was struggling that badly in trying to do what it's designed to do. Of course, you saw in the sew-offs today, that's the past. Now the present and the future is very bright, very, very bright for this machine. There, I've got my flashlight and I'm just looking down one of those wells to see how much more junk I've got to pull out of there. second. What was that last shot? So this is, I'll just show this to you real quick. This is, again, carbon is not supposed to fossilize like this. You see how it's scorched? It's scorched on the top, and it just basically fossilized this carbon, which I've only seen a couple of times. I've only seen a couple of times with all the hundreds of machines that I've worked on over the years. Well, I'm probably underestimating, more like thousands of machines, but hundreds or thousands of machines, I've never seen this, I've only seen this like once or twice. I haven't seen it for a long time. So now we're looking down into that well and we're making some headway, but you can still see the fossilized material around the outer edges, and that's all part of the electrical field. So I'm needing to continue to with a combination of solvent, but I can actually begin to see some of the copper. See the copper at the top there? You're actually starting to be able to see some of the copper as we're stripping those layers down one by one by one by one. And it just gives you an idea again of how intense this was in this motor before it went through my process. Even along the top upper edges, you can see some of that molasses junk. See it? And now we can see down into that motor well, and we're seeing more and more of the copper inside part of that electrical field. But look at on the outside of the motor as well. You can just see how inundated this motor was. Kind of like going back to that featherweight that I prepared for my local friend in Oconto a while back, where her boyfriend had used an inappropriate type of oil on her featherweight motor. Even her featherweight motor was not quite this bad. And there we're getting real close to a point where that well is being restored back to a point where it's supposed to be. We can see almost all of the copper down in the bottom of that electrical field. And then the rest of it I was able to mitigate once I actually tore the motor down. More of that fossilized carbon chunks coming out of the motor. And apart from the outside of the well, the inside of the well is right at about the final stages there. Again, I don't take every single picture of every stage, and I was trying to get through this because I had other work to do as well, but you're not seeing every single shot of every single stage, I guess is what I wanted to say. And now I'm focused on, we've dealt with most of the issues with the motor. Now I'm focused on the bottom of the machine and that to get all of that sludge and stuff out of there so that it doesn't work its way back into the motor again. And it doesn't show up because of the lighting, but that was almost charcoal black. That swab right there that I just pulled out of there. There you can see off in the distance, it's a little, you can see the darkness a little bit more clearly based on the angle of it there. That's the top retainer that holds the motor brush in place. That also has a field of copper on it as well, and that has to be stripped down and get all that junk off of there, because that's part of what completes the circuit on the motor, even all the way up into those pieces. And there you can see a motor that's starting to come back. I've already gone through the process off camera of breaking the motor down even further, getting all that stuff out of there. And now you can see that that motor is starting to present like a Swedish Beauty motor should, without all the molasses lubricant that someone had pumped it full of. Doesn't that look different? You can even see off the side here in the bottom I've gotten all that junk cleaned up as well, so that that motor is not going to get recontaminated again. And that really is a point to be made when you're cleaning a machine and mitigating an issue like this, you've got to do the entire machine. And again, this is only a small phase of my finalization process, the motor, but it obviously took a lot more time because of the trauma that the machine had gone through. There's a little pan on the bottom. You can see this stuff was oozing so badly it dripped all the way down into the pan as well. And there's a pan the way it's supposed to look without all that junk on there, just like the motor as well. And that's part of the bobbin winding assembly that also the slow gear is a part of as well. And that has to be broken all the way down. That's only showing part of the breakdown of it, but all those parts have to be cleaned individually because that's right in proximity to the motor that had all of that contaminant in it, and it had affected that assembly as well. So all that has to be stripped down, and then there's critical points of the bobbin assembly that have to be lubricated. There's other parts that have to be stripped down. And this is one of the critical pivot points within that assembly right there where it changes gears. And the other problem, apart from it being contaminated, is someone at some point had taken it apart and they had reassembled it incorrectly. So it was not functioning the way it was designed to function. I found the same thing on John Smith's machine as well. John Smith, again, is my friend that worked in the Navy with sewing machines and also with NASA. And I don't know, maybe there's a conspiracy theory out there where someone's trying to sabotage the Swedish slow gears. But as long as I stay on the job and others like me, we will win the battle. And this is the inside part of the piece that you pull out to engage the slow gear. And I'm just trying to demonstrate that you can't neglect any part when you're cleaning and finalizing a machine. You've got to break that part all the way down, whether it's the upper tension, whether it's the bobbin assembly, whether it's the motor, and you've got to clean every single piece, every single millimeter of that surface. And also, oftentimes on the inside of these pulls as well, you get little barbing that kind of makes it harder to engage that slow gear. So you might also have to grind certain parts down and then use a wire brush to smooth out those rough edges. And here I've finished up on the motor, I've finished up on the slow gear, and I'm starting to move into the other finalization phases, part of which includes very detailed cleaning around the joining pieces. Again, you may have seen in the opening shot that this base actually separates from the pillar, and so there's a lot of junk that has to be cleaned out of there as well. And that's part of the reason when you were looking at that Swedish Beauty during the premiere today, a lot of you were probably just drooling over it because it is. I mean, Swedish Beauties are meant to be head turners, and that requires a lot of work, obviously. And that's our last shot right there. That's our last shot. So I appreciate your patience as we've gone through many, 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 many phases. As you can kind of see there through the machine. And I'll just revisit those real quick for you, just kind of recap. And again, I want to thank Annette Stover, not only for your business, but also how active you are on Facebook, on the Cow Country page, how active you are in being a source of encouragement, being a sense of validation that the work that I'm doing has value. I really appreciate all the encouragement that you've given. And it's really been a privilege and an honor to prepare this Swedish Beauty that I had intended for you from the moment that I learned of it. It's like, okay, that's the machine for Annette. And then I had that little sidebar delay of, couldn't tell in the pictures, couldn't tell in the video that there was an issue with that motor, but I'm going to take care of that motor. I'm going to get it back to a point where it's better than when it left the factory. And that's what you've got now. You've got a motor that, well, you saw it. You saw it today between all the sew-offs we did, and I'll just pull those out real quick so we can look at those just as a final capstone of this premiere. So all the sew-offs we did, let me get my hands on them. We did all of these cam generated stitches between cams D, B, and C. And I think that Annette's machine just did a phenomenal job. If you want to rewind and watch these again or see them up close, you can certainly do that. Then we did this leather material that I've seen used a lot on reupholstering chairs. And we did it like a round and about on it. Again, the machine just did phenomenal. Then we also went with a single layer and then a double layer of genuine elk hide. We're probably talking about 14 ounces of leather. And Annette's machine did not miss a beat. We did 6 layers of heavy grade denim, both with a straight stitch and a modified zigzag. No challenge at all for this machine. And then last but certainly not least, we did 4 layers of commercial grade canvas. And we didn't just sew it with a straight stitch or a zigzag. We laid down all of cam C decorative stitches and generated stitches. Oh, that's why it's a little bit dark. I shut that off because I was getting reflection. Hold on a second. Well, that helps a little bit, doesn't it? We didn't just do a straight stitch or a zigzag. We laid down these decorative stitches that are part of cam C, or I should say all of cam C, minus the zigzag. And we got results like this. And again, look at the thickness from the side when you're talking about 4 layers of canvas, commercial grade canvas. So this is the finish line for one of my machines. This is the finish line. After I've demonstrated through multiple conformation sew-offs, initially using this newfangled chrome professional grade needle that I'm still kind of mixed on. But I think it might be a resource to my quilting friends and other folks that do lighter grade sewing using a variety of different finer needles. Finer needles for me is when you hit like in the range of 70 and below as far as size. But this needle definitely struggled as we tried to jump into some of that heavier grade sewing and causing that thread to break. And as soon as I switched it out for one of my Schmetz standard, not fancy dancy chrome professional grade, my standard Schmetz universal needle, all of a sudden those challenges were put to rest. And all of a sudden this machine just got it done like it, like it should. And even when we did our fairly impartial testing of this fancy dancy chrome plated professional grade needle by Schmetz, we didn't find any significant impact as far as temperature. We didn't see that temperature spike up. We didn't see, it wasn't convincing to me. Maybe it was convincing to you, and that's all well and good. But we are now at a point where, first and foremost, I've had the privilege of finalizing and presenting in a premiere Annette Stover's CI-21A. Secondly, we had the privilege of seeing for the very first time the super cool stitches that Cam D puts out. So Hans, if you're getting a little bit excited now, I understand. I understand totally if you're getting a little bit excited, because all of these stitches right over here, these 4 rows that I'm touching, are rows that you've never had the opportunity to sew on any of your Swedish Beauties over there in Norway. And as soon as I can get that Cam D heading towards you and you can start to stick it in your machines, you're going to be able to generate all of these 4 stitches right here you see, plus the zigzag obviously, but these 4 stitches right here that are only on Cam D. And I'm not bragging about it because you have a Cam E, you son of a gun. but you'll be able to do these on your Swedish Beauties. And it's just a small way. I've done little things off the radar for Bill, and I just appreciate Bill so much and all he's contributed to the Facebook page and helping people. And I haven't had that opportunity as much because of the distance difference with Hans, but knowing that that CAMD will benefit him and he'll be able to sew these stitches over here. I'm really excited to get that in the mail and get it through customs and all that kind of stuff so that Hans can use it with his Swedish Beauties he's got. He's got several of them. Someday in the future, I'm hoping to visit him, as you know, and be able to see his collection of Swedish Beauties, along with all of his featherweights now, because he's also a singer guy now too, which I think is super cool. And that's really the whole message I've gotten from a lot of you as far as this channel is you really have been converted in some sense. Let me come onto this shot a little bit. You really have been converted to some degree by me presenting such a wide scope of machines and showing their capabilities. Everything from Elnas to Kenmores to Japanese clones to Fofs to Husqvarnas to all kinds of singers, and you know I'm omitting a lot of them. The American Beauty machines that I've shown as well on this channel. I've had the privilege to put so many machines in front of you, and I have so many more to put in front of you too. But my whole message through those machines is there is greatness in every single machine that's ever been made. There's greatness. And I love to be able to demonstrate that in phases of the process like this, where we get to the finish line and I'm able to let that machine puff up and show its, you know, its capabilities. And then all of a sudden people that have been absolutely, like my friend Debbie out in Ohio, that just opened that ice cream shop. And also I prepared a number of machines for her that she dropped off with her daughter and friend. You guys remember all that. They actually drove from Ohio to the workshop, dropped off a number of machines, and then systematically I sent those machines back to her so that she could enjoy them. But, you know, she was the one that said to me, I was a snob. I only had this level of respect and focus for one brand of machines. And as I watched more and more of your videos, Scott, and as I was involved in more and more of your premieres, all of a sudden my eyes were opened. The veil was lifted, and all of a sudden I was like, wow, I didn't realize the greatness in Kenmores. I didn't realize the greatness in Elnas. I didn't realize the greatness in Japanese clones. I didn't realize the greatness in, you can fill the blank in, out of the machines that you've seen on this channel. And isn't that fun? To change people's thinking, not only to respect vintage machines, but all of a sudden if they've been devoted to one brand, one maker, and that's been it, all of a sudden to have them go, wow, my respect level for, you can name the brand, has all of a sudden changed as a result of seeing what it can do at the end, after it makes it through that finalization process. Kind of like the recent premiere that we just did on that FOF 332, that's going to be heading to Pennsylvania for Sunny, aka Susan. We saw that sew-off that they did at the factory. Remember that original FOF sew-off that she got with a machine that came out of Goodwill in Kalamazoo, Michigan? And, that shows confidence when someone doesn't just put a sticker on the end of the bed, which was on Susan's, on Sunny's 332 when it came to the workshop from that Goodwill purchase through Kalamazoo, Michigan. The sticker on the end of the bed, you remember that? It basically said, everything's great about this machine. It just doesn't have a bobbin case, but you can buy them on eBay. What level of confidence does that put into a customer? I'm really impressed. Maybe that wasn't part of the pictures that Sunny saw, or she just had a level of faith. She was like, oh, who cares? It's going to go to the workshop, and Scott's going to make it right anyway. So who cares about a sticker on the end of the bed? The fact that I haven't seen this machine do any sewing, the fact that I haven't seen any sew-offs, even in still shots from this 332, but because I'm going to send it right to the workshop and Scott's going to take care of it, no worries. And I really appreciate that vote of confidence, because I will do everything within my power to take that machine to the top of its game, just like that 332 that you just saw premiered on the other workbench. So if you're looking at Goodwill online, I think that's awesome. They're a great organization. If you're looking at Facebook Marketplace, no worries. If you're looking at Etsy, cool. If you're looking at some other venue that's selling machines, I think that's really good. I think that's really good. We should be able to take any machine from any of those venues, and if you send it to me, you're going to see that machine at a level that you've never seen before, ever. Kind of like this machine you just saw today that now belongs to Annette Stover in the great state of Texas. And I never said her city name, and I won't, to respect her privacy, but it is the prettiest name. Just makes you want to drive down to Texas and say, what is that city all about? Because it's such a pretty name where she and her family live. So that's it. God bless you guys. Thanks again for sticking it out on a very long premiere. But we covered a lot of valuable stuff, didn't we? And sometimes class goes long. And sometimes it doesn't. And that's good too. So I'm going to ring the bell, and I'm going to give you one last quote. Give you one last quote that I've been quoting lately. Quite a bit. Remember, yesterday is history. Tomorrow, a mystery. But today is a gift, which is why it's called the present. So make the most of your gift every single day. Make the most of it. And continue to follow what I'm doing in my work here. I hope you do. And I'm encouraged by things that you post. I'm encouraged by your interactions with posts that are going up on Facebook. And again, if you're strictly a YouTuber, consider setting up an account on Facebook only for the purpose of viewing the posts that I put on Facebook, which are very different and reveal a lot of things about my process that you'll never get strictly from the premieres on YouTube. So I would strongly encourage you to consider doing that. I respect your privacy. I respect your decision, much like I respect the decision of a gentleman that I recently chatted with out of Minnesota. And he said, I was on Facebook for 10 years and I just decided I could do more of my time. And then his last sentence in his note was, but I really miss seeing what you're doing on Facebook and what Hans is sharing and what Bill is sharing. I'm missing all that now because I'm no longer a part of Facebook. So consider, it's kind of like throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Hang on to the baby. Hang on to the baby cow of what we're doing on Cow Country on Facebook. Leave the bathwater to the side if you have stuff that you find objectionable on Facebook, and there certainly is stuff there. So it's kind of like the broken clock. The broken clock that a lot of people would just throw away, kind of like a broken sewing machine. They would just throw it away. But remember, a broken clock is still right twice a day, right? All right, and we're coming up on daylight savings time, so it'll still be right. A broken clock will still be right even with daylight savings time. How cool is that? And if you're in New Mexico or Arizona or Hawaii or some of those other places that don't do daylight savings time, then your life is simpler. It just is. All right, y'all take care and stay safe, okay?